Hello, ladies and gents, and welcome to this episode of The Strongest Argument. I am joined today by my friend, the Imam, Mr. Adam Kelwick, of what's the name of your mosque?
Abdullah Quilliam Mosque.
Abdullah Quilliam Mosque in Liverpool on West Derby Road.
Sweet.
Thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you for inviting me.
Should we go straight in?
Let's do it.
Tommy Robinson. What do you think of Mr. Tommy Robinson?
Wow. I've had a lot of thoughts about Tommy Robinson for a number of years. So let's pretend I'm describing Tommy Robinson to an outsider, which is something which I do often.
Yep.
Friends in different parts of the world.
Sure.
And they ask me, who is this Tommy Robinson guy? And the way I simplify it, because I don't have hours to talk about the intricate details, the way I simplify it is I tell them he's the head of the largest anti-Muslim or anti-Islam movement in the country.
Okay.
Now, I know there's a lot more to it than that, but that's the way that I choose to summarize.
Whoever the largest anti-Islam movement in the country is now, they're furious. They're going to be in the comments. They're going to be like, it's us, damn you.
No, I get that, and I understand that. If somebody asked me here, I'd probably go into a little bit more detail. So Tommy Robinson, as we know, he was the leader of the EDL, the English Defence League, whose identity kind of evolved to be about highlighting the fact that Islam is a cancer. Muslims are not producing anything good in our country. It's a threat. And then what you have is the vast majority of all the different societal problems, whatever they are somehow dragged into that narrative. And then Muslims are to blame. Although there seems to have been a recent change, because when I hear Tommy Robinson of late, he's kind of moved away from the narrative that Muslims are to blame. And he's now saying that, no, actually, I don't have a problem with Muslims. I'm not saying that all Muslims should be kicked out of the country. But what I am saying is the ideology or the religion, Islam, is the problem.
Okay.
And for me, it's very trying to think of the right word, because I want to say offensive, but if I say offensive, everybody will, the Muslims are being offended again. So it's very frustrating. It's very frustrating as a person who is a member of the Islamic faith, somebody who's very, very proud to be English and to be British, and somebody who for the vast majority of my life, I've tried to be a servant to society, to people in our country, whatever background they're from.
Yep.
That can be quite frustrating to hear this narrative push time and time again. At the same time, if we're to talk about Tommy Robinson, I understand that he was raised in quite a hostile environment in Luton, and I know he's had lots of clashes with Muslim extremists, people who in my opinion, I put them in the same category of people who are misrepresenting Islam, and so I can see. Although I don't agree with it, I can understand how this hatred or this kind of demonization or this uncomfort with this fascination what Tommy Robinson has with attacking Islam. I can see it.
Okay.
But I think it's important that people know that a bunch of loonies claiming to be adherents to a religion, you don't throw everybody under the bus because of a bunch of loonies.
I'd like to come back to that with you because Tommy, I interviewed on his own, and he was allowed to present his strongest argument for that. And I'd like you to have the same opportunity to present your strongest counter argument for that. Just placing this in time, it's we're in late October of 2024. Tommy just received his sentence yesterday. He's got 18 months in a high security prison for releasing a documentary. How do you as a Muslim, how do you feel about
that? So that's high.
Yeah.
Part of me is relieved that he's been sent to prison. And the reason for that is because of the riots which we had recently. And I was going onto the X platform. Throughout the riots, even though I hadn't added Tommy as a friend on there, when you scroll down a few posts and it says people who to follow, constantly throughout the riots, I don't know if it was down to the algorithms or there's some kind of optimal kind of pushing of his account, but all I was seeing is the post constantly.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so throughout the riots, Tommy Robinson's account was constantly promoted to me, and it's feedback what I've had from other people as well. And I know a lot of people have been criticizing him, saying, "Look, he's over on holiday on his sunbed, and while he's stoking the fire of the riots." So I know people have been criticizing him in general, but I don't think he played a positive role in those riots. I think, and maybe I'll be criticized for this by a lot of people in my community. But I think a lot of the issues which Tommy Robinson does raise they're due to valid concerns, and there is something behind it. These are issues which people suffer from. If we're talking about the white British working class in general, there are a lot of things which he brings to the table which are genuine issues which do need fixing. But then, I don't know, I think it's just the way he shouts at the camera, and he kind of taps into people's emotions. And I don't think emotional responses are helpful for anybody.
At this point in the interview, I'm just going to say to the people who are going to criticize you, and me probably, you're in a no-win situation here. You've come into this interview in good faith. You are going to be criticized both by people on the right, and you're going to be criticized by people in the Muslim community. You're going to get it from both sides. So the people watching who want to level those criticisms, they are not displaying the courage that you're displaying by coming here and doing this. They're sat at home, most of them anonymous, sniping from the shadows. And I think when we go through the comments and we see that, we need to bear that in mind. You're putting your face, your name, and your reputation on the line being here. They're not.
I hear what you're saying. I've always been taught that if you believe in something and it's genuine and you've got good intentions, then present it. So I'm not doing anything. People will criticize. You know, you've been in this kind of online game for many years.
Yes.
Your skin grows thick.
Yeah.
I do appreciate genuine constructive comments. I do appreciate genuine questions when people ask me. But I really, I am who I am. I believe what I believe, and that's what I'm here to present today. So when Tommy Robinson got sent down, there was a sigh of relief from one perspective that, you know, finally a lot of the trouble which has been attributed to him. Now, I know he doesn't claim any of it, and he claims that he had no part in the violence and the thuggery, and if you go through and kind of pinpoint with detail, he has actually never said to anybody, go out there and burn hotels down where refugees are staying. However, I think it would take an idiot to not recognize that he was definitely a big pushing factor for the general. You're
saying the tone was agitating and not calming. That's the criticism.
Exactly.
Okay.
It was about escalation, not about de-escalation. Okay. And this is during a time, don't forget, Richard, everybody, not just the Muslim community, who were very scared during the riots. They didn't know what was going to happen. Oh, is it going to be another Kristallnacht like in Germany? Or all the Muslim businesses going to be burnt down? Or all the mosques going to be burnt? What's going to happen? Do we have to start leaving this country? Is it going to be that bad? But it wasn't just the Muslim community.
No,
because I've got a lot of non-Muslim relatives and family. Everybody was worried. We saw our city centres being smashed up. We saw the shops where we got the Greggs, the Lush, and everything was being damaged. And
so to contextualize it for people who weren't here during the summer when it got hot in temperature and in attitude, walking down Bold Street as a white fellow, a lot of people were looking at me, side-eyeing me, fearfully. And I was thinking, this is never in my entire life, I've never felt that atmosphere in Liverpool. I've never had people look at me with fear or suspicion because of my ethnicity. And I thought, God, it must be across the whole country. I went to Uxbridge There was one day I was in Liverpool and people were looking at me with fear and suspicion. Went to Uxbridge the next day, which is like a township just outside of London. Totally different atmosphere. Like nothing. There was nothing there. I went and sat next to a Somalian woman in a hijab, and I was like, she'll move. She's just going to quietly get up and move. She didn't. She started smoking. She turned to me, struck up a conversation with me. Have you got any kids? How many kids do you want to have? Blah, blah, blah. Totally different atmosphere. The reason why I'm saying this is because when we have a problem in this country, we can sort of feel like, oh, it's everywhere all at once. It's not. You can have very different attitudes and temperatures, emotionally speaking, in different cities at the same time. Here in Liverpool, it was very tense for a while. And as you say, not just for non-Muslims, for anybody who wasn't white, it seemed to be. So I had people coming to me and saying, you know, what's going to happen? Am I going to get battered in the street? And I'm like, I don't think so. Like, you can't just ask me because I'm white. I'm not plugged into the whole white community. I don't know, but I don't.
So you would have told them, I don't think so, but would you have been able to have guaranteed it for them?
No, because
this is the thing. Nobody really knew where things were going.
Well, this is probably going to be thematic for the conversation. I can't be accountable for an entire group of people just because you've identified me as British and white. I'm not. That doesn't mean I'm accountable for every thug, psychopath, narcissist, and weirdo.
Thank you very much. You're right.
Yes.
That's the strongest argument. Likewise,
yeah,
as an individual Muslim or any member of the Muslim community, when somebody decides to blow themselves up in Iraq or Saudi Arabia or wherever in the world they decide to do it, killing themselves and killing lots of innocent people, likewise, we can't be held to blame for that. And this is the thing, Richard, because there's so much discussion, there's so much national discussion amongst politicians, in the media, amongst influencers and circles and podcasters like yourself, where Muslims are on the agenda.
Right.
We're on the agenda. Everyone's talking about us all the time, and it's very cringe to listen to as a Muslim who studied the religion. But the added difficulty what we have is we're not only talking about Muslims and our relationships in the UK, because whatever happens anywhere else in the world, and don't forget there's a lot of geopolitics going on, even right now as we speak. We've got the Israel, Gaza war, the genocide, what the Israelis are committing. We've got Iraq, Iran, all these places all over the world. And whenever any one of them does anything, what somebody doesn't like, it's so easy to just be dragged into this narrative. Look at these British Muslims. Yeah. They're the ones who are responsible for this.
Yes.
And it gets tiring, to be honest. And, you know, a lot of people in the Muslim community, they're like, oh. So, for example, when the Southport stabbings happened, my first reaction was horror. And I think we discussed this last time. And
you're saying Muslims are horrified by the killings of innocent? Oh, really?
Of course.
I did not.
Sorry. No, forgive me, Richard.
I just dialed my sarcasm up to 200.
No, but this is the demonstration of what I'm talking about.
Yes, yeah.
Because I'm used to actually
the really people saying
reactions like that. Because
so I shouldn't laugh. It's terrible. It's tragic. It's awful. But that's insane.
Yeah.
That's insane.
And so me and my family, we dealt with we didn't deal with it. We kind of processed the tragedy, what happened in Southport. And then straight after, my instinct was to know, who is this guy? Please, God, don't make it a Muslim. Please don't let and then obviously the rumors started spreading that it was a Muslim. And then the riots basically sparked from that, didn't they? But the question what I'm asking people is, okay, so the guy, he wasn't a Muslim. He wasn't a Syrian refugee who came over on a small boat. Apparently he was from originally from a different part of the world, born and brought up in Wales. What if he was a Muslim? And I know there would have been a price to pay for me and my community, even though we've got nothing to do with such a demonic person and a demonic action, but still it's going to come on our heads as the Muslim community. And then where there's going to be an expectation for some kind of press release and distancing. And also as well, as soon as you distance yourself from something, you're in the distancing itself, you're kind of admitting a connection, if that makes sense.
No, it's, it does make sense. So I've been in different political areas online, and then sometimes you almost feel it's almost like a pressure to declare, I'm not racist. I don't want to declare I'm not racist. That's humiliating. Please, like, what about good faith expectation? Okay, I'm not racist, and I don't drown puppies every day. Like, what else do you want? Murder is bad. Slavery is like, that's humiliating. And I don't think it's fair to drag a community by the scruff of the collar and say, right, say it's bad. Well, yeah, of course it is. And also, the sun is hot. Like, what are we doing? What are we doing?
Well, since the 11th of September, that's what's been expected from the Muslim community time and time again for any catastrophe. So whether it's 7/7, whether it's the murder of Lee Rigby, whether it's all these other things, which, by the way, a lot of the anti-Islam circles, they love to kind of amplify these events and use them to pin them on us. We have nothing to do with them. In fact, you know, if you look at the victims, you know, these innocent victims. So, for example, 7/7, how many Muslims were murdered on that day on the tubes? These people don't differentiate between Muslim and Christian and Jew, and they even kill themselves.
Yes.
If they're willing to kill themselves, who will they spare? Think about it that way.
I want to get into Islamic philosophy, Islamic doctrine, Islamic ideology with you. But to bring it back to Tommy again, I know Tommy. Met his kids. I like Tommy. I'm worried. He's in prison. I'm a bit scared for him, for his family as well and his friends. There is a chance that if he's taken out of solitary and they move him, that he could be attacked. How do you feel? Well, obviously you're a British man. How do you feel about that? Not as a Muslim, just as a British man.
Right. So the first thing is, how did I respond when I heard that Tommy's been sentenced to 18 months?
Oh yes, you said so my first thing was
a sigh of relief.
I didn't let you finish.
That this kind of toxic narrative, which targets my community, the Muslim community, is going to come to some kind of halt due to that. Even though that's not what he was sent down for, by the way. That's but that's and at the same time, I've been thinking recently, because I've been taught to see people as souls, to look at people as souls. And one thing I try and do is always try and put myself in the boots of the other person. And so I've been trying to work out, forget about the image what's out there. So for some people, he's the head of a racist, Islamophobic movement. And I know people deny that. I'm just saying, for many people, he is this racist, Islamophobic, divisive figure. For other people, he's this champion of the working class, willing to sacrifice his own life and his own time with his family for what he believes is right for the people in this country. What I've tried to do is put both of those images to one side and think about not Tommy Robinson, Stephen Yaxley Lennon. Right? Where is this guy right now? Because he must be seeing these two versions of him, which are pushed out there. And at the same time, I think that the real version of him must be something he reflects upon often. And I can't imagine to believe how it must have felt flying back into the UK when he knows he's going towards almost certain imprisonment. And whether that gives him time to reflect, of course it will. But I also see somebody with incredible influence, and I wish the people of goodness who want genuine good for society could kind of guide Tommy to be a force. As we said before, there's divisiveness, there's escalation. If he was able to utilize that energy, that strength, that position, what he has, to unite, to bring together and be a force for good, then I think, so potentially what I see in Tommy Robinson is a potentially amazing person who could do amazing things. Whether his time in prison is going to give him the chance to reflect and, I don't know, come out a different person. But I don't think either of those two images which I described, either this outright Islamophobic, racist, hate leader, or even this champion of the British white working class. I don't think either of those are entirely accurate.
Okay.
And yeah, but he's been sent down now. He's in prison. And one thing I've been thinking about is I've been making phone calls, and what I want to do is, and I'll put the message out here now in front of you, and it's a message to Muslims who are in the prison where he's been incarcerated. And I think the worst thing a Muslim could do, for several reasons, and I'll explain these, for several reasons, is do anything to harm Tommy Robinson while he's in prison. The first reason, the first motivation for that, because I'm talking to the Muslims, is because that's not what Islam teaches. You can't do that.
What does Islam teach in that regard?
Islam doesn't teach vigilantism, which is what any attack on Tommy in prison would be. He's been convicted.
It's anti-Quran to be a vigilante.
Of course, you can't abuse anybody. You can't hit anybody. You're not allowed. However, if we look at the laws of the street, I can imagine as soon as Tommy arrives in prison, all the Muslims in that prison, not just the Muslims, well, not all of them, to be fair, a lot, some Muslims in that prison, and even other people from different communities. Imagine the excitement. They're going to want to have a competition now to see who can be the first person to give him a punch. But that's the law of the streets. That's not the teachings of Islam. And to be a stronger person, the guy's been convicted. He's in prison now. He's got a lot of time to think and reflect. And I think if any Muslim was to attack Tommy Robinson in prison, I think that would actually amplify his calls against Muslims. Do you see what I'm saying? Yeah. It's almost like it's a trap. It's almost like it's a trap. Okay, you go and beat Tommy Robinson up. Now the news gets out. Tommy Robinson stays relevant and his anti-Islamic messages stay relevant. And not just that, but he can prove that everything he's been saying about these barbaric Muslims or for all these years is true. Because look, they've just set on him in prison. And I've also heard these things about, oh, it's the Muslim gangs who are running the prisons and all the rest of it. So yeah, don't touch Tommy Robinson. Give him the space what he needs. Let him have a think about things. Him and his messages, they're not relevant anymore, or at least for the next 9 months. And see what that can do. If anything, I think a positive interaction with the Muslim, fellow Muslim prisoners would be a positive thing. And that in itself, just being a positive example, that counters all of the kind of vitriol what's been coming out for all these years. And not only that, I'm not saying act nice to prove him wrong. I'm saying just be a Muslim, like we're taught, because that's what Islam teaches you anyway. So you don't, as somebody who claims to be Muslim, you don't have to go out of your way to be a nice person. You're supposed to be a nice person anyway. You're in prison, okay, I'm not going to judge you. The judge judged you. You've got your time in prison for whatever crime you committed. But I also know, because I've met people who've come out of prison, and I know what a positive impact that experience has. Not only that, even if we go to the Quran, we have stories of people, good people, who went to prison, and they've their spiritual ranks have been raised, and they've Joseph, for example, in the story of Joseph when he was sent to prison, and how he came out a stronger leader after that.
There are reasons why monks and ascetics leave society and sit in isolation, and there's no stimuli from the world, there's no confusion, there's just you and prayer and silence and God, and that's it. You come back to yourself. You can't avoid yourself in solitary confinement, which is what he's facing, because he's at risk. So obviously, I allowed Tommy a lot of uninterrupted exposition when I interviewed him, and I'm going to do the same thing here because we are limited for time. What I think I heard you say is, if you're appealing to the Muslim inmates, you're appealing from a faith level, which is it's non-Islamic, but also from just street smarts level. Like this is not going to help. It's not going to help.
Exactly.
What do you think would happen outside of the prison if Tommy was successfully attacked inside of the prison?
Right. So my biggest concern is that if Tommy ends up in Belmarsh prison, that's also where a lot of these very, very extreme, quote unquote, Muslim prisoners are also held. And unfortunately, I don't think my message will get through to that type of person. Or again, giving people the benefit of the doubt. Maybe their time in prison has been a time for self-reflection, and maybe they've kind of reviewed the way that they look at life. What potential could it have on the outside? I think Tommy's biggest challenge now is, after he's been building up lots of momentum, and that momentum, by the way, spiked during the riots. Like his following and his kind of exposure vastly peaked during the riots. And I think, so that's going to be affected. The momentum is going to be affected. And I think any attack on him in prison will just bring that relevance back, and will keep the narrative going. For example, if but I'm not saying, this is the thing, Richard. I'm not saying don't attack Tommy Robinson because his popularity will remain. I'm saying don't attack Tommy Robinson because it's a bad thing to do. It's not a nice thing to do.
So now we're forcing you to say murder is bad. You don't drown kittens every day for fun. Attacking people when they're in prison isn't a good thing to do.
No, but I think it's important to clarify. And the reason is, a lot of people on the other side, if we can say, like, I prefer us all to be on one side, if I'm honest. Everybody in society. Let's be on the same side. If you're not my brother or sister in Islam, then you're my brother or sister in humanity. Right. And I know that's a big pill for a lot of people to swallow. Okay. But this is what I'm about. And you can look at my track record, you can look at the work I've done, whether it's humanitarian work, whether it's food banks, whatever I've been doing all of my life. This is my kind of philosophy. Let's all understand. We know the difference between good and bad. We know the difference. It's something which is innate in the human being. And true, we have laws to kind of implement that and monitor it. But I think ultimately people know, like what you're saying, killing somebody is not bad. Killing somebody is bad.
Freudian slip. Depends on who we're killing. Edit that.
Somebody will take that, and they'll anyway. Punching somebody in the face, it's not good. You can't do it. Do you even need a Quran or a Bible or a Torah to teach you that? We know it's not a good thing anyway. But one of the challenges which I've experienced is that a lot of people on the other side, if we're going to call them that, is they're so convinced that every Muslim out there is a nasty person, so that even when they see a nice Muslim shopkeeper, they'll be like, yeah, but he's a good one. Yeah, but the rest of them are horrible. Right. Or if they see somebody like me, they'll be like, yeah, no. He's just saying that to make himself look good. But really, when he gets the chance to become prime minister or establish his caliphate, he's gonna chop all our heads off. And it's like, come on. You know the saying, actions speak louder than words. If you want to know who somebody is, look at their actions. And this is a challenge also, which I give to the followers of the like of Tommy Robinson. You know, you speak amazing words. Where's the action? You've got a lot of energy, a lot of passion. I see you shouting on the streets, but where's the action? Why not harness that and serve the community? You know, how many food banks are you and your communities running? How many people are you supporting in your day-to-day life? How many elders, during the, I really don't like to blow my own trumpet, but I just want to use as an example, during COVID, the lockdown, remember the harshest lockdown when you weren't allowed out of your house. What I did is I got my children to take out, we printed some notes off, and we said, if you're struggling, because what I did, I saw it coming. I saw the lockdown coming. I knew that the shelves were going to be empty like a month before they emptied, because I do humanitarian work. We do emergency responses, and I saw the signs. So I stocked up with lots of things. Before you judge me, it wasn't during the time when everyone was buying everything. Before that, And we sent out a note, and I made sure that my children posted them to all of our neighbors. By neighbors, I'm not just talking about the street which I live on, because the teachings of Islam say your neighbor, the definition of your neighbor is 40 houses in every direction.
It's a lot of neighbors.
It's a lot of neighbors. But not just that, there's an emphasis on being good to your neighbors as well. So I got my kids to post these notes out, and some of the neighbors did respond. There were a couple of elderly ones. There were people who didn't have anything in, and before you knew it, my kids were taking toilet rolls over tins of beans, and just so. What I'm trying to say is a lot of people are talking about how society is broken, and don't forget we're in the middle of a crisis, the cost of living crisis.
Yeah,
inflation is skyrocketing.
Yeah,
not just here, all around the world. And so we're in challenging times. And in those challenging times, for me, there are two options in how you respond to it. You can, number one, come out and criticize the government, put all your energy into criticize the government, which they need to be criticized. The people should criticize them. Or you can put your energy into you be the solution. Why wait for your local MP to do anything? Why wait for the Prime Minister? And I can hear people saying, yeah, because we pay taxes. Yeah, we do. I get that. And do criticize, as long as it's constructive and you think some good will come from it. But other people falling short in their responsibilities is not an excuse for you to fall short in your responsibilities. And I'm just somebody who thinks, who you know, when I saw the recent rally down in London, and I saw people, and I watched some of the interviews, and a lot of people are complaining about a lot of things. And most of the complaints, what they have, are genuine. And I share those complaints. This is the irony, by the way. A lot of the stuff which people raise as issues during these rallies, as a Muslim, I agree with a lot of it.
You said some of the concerns are legitimate, and you share them as a Muslim. What are some of the legitimate concerns you've heard from what Keir Starmer, the metropolitan elite, will just dismiss as being the whining of right-wing thugs, right-wing white British thugs? What are the legitimate concerns?
Right. So there's no doubt, there shouldn't be any doubt in anybody's mind right now that we have problems in society. A lot of those are socioeconomic problems. A lot of those have to do with the cost of living. The circles who I keep, the people who I know, even people who are traditionally middle class, usually have enough to, get by, live a nice life, spare money for entertainment, for holidays, whatever you want to do. Even that group of people now are starting to struggle to meet their month-to-month bills. So if that's the case for the middle class, then what do you think about people who are at the bottom, if you like? And I don't say at the bottom in a derogatory way, because all of my life I've been with people who are poor and struggling, whether that's in refugee camps in Syria, whether it's in Yemen, whether in the humanitarian way. I have great respect for people who don't have much to get by on. And actually, I've some of the biggest wisdom and life lessons I've ever taken are from people who are seen to be at the bottom. For me, I look up to them. They're my teachers. They teach me how to deal with life. So that's a definite issue. The strain on the NHS, for example.
Yeah.
I've had so many health problems personally over the last few years where I've just not had the appetite to even contact my GP. I'll just sit it out because I know the queues are going to be horrendous and I'm not going to be seen. Issues like terrorism and extremism. Like I said before, these are problems for the Muslim community.
What? I thought you don't support terrorism? This is a very interesting, I'm learning a lot today. This is going to get, people will cut this bit out and be like, who is this idiot?
I don't know whether to laugh or cry, Richard.
Laughter is always best.
Yeah. What about laughing with tears at the same time?
Laughing with tears in your eyes. I don't support killing innocent people, for the love of God, please.
But what I mean by that is Muslims are just as likely to be victims of these crazy, hate-driven terrorists as anybody else.
Well, when we're talking about ISIS, it was overwhelmingly Muslims who suffered at the hands of ISIS.
Of course.
Are there any other concerns that you've heard that you think, yeah, that's legitimate?
Issues like grooming gangs.
Yeah.
which is a big part of the anti-Muslim narrative. But what people have to understand is that if there's, I'm trying to use the correct terminology. I was going to use a bad word, which wouldn't have gone on air. But if there's an abuser of children in our society, from whichever community or whatever color or whatever religion they claim to follow, do you think their moral compass is going to be so aligned that they're only going to stop at white girls? Do you think that they're not also abusing Pakistani girls, Arab girls, Somali girls, wherever? Do you see what I'm saying?
So are you saying that...
I'm saying the abuse is rife.
The abuse is rife. So with the grooming gangs, it wasn't just white girls who were targeted. That's what you're saying?
Of course.
Why was the narrative spun that way? He asked naively.
I think it's because of the failings in towns like Rotherham, what we saw. What we saw is systematic failures from the authorities there. And there was a big turnover of people coming through care who were falling prey to these grooming gangs. So I think that's the reason why the vast majority of them will have been from a particular demographic. But what I'm saying to you, if a guy, a quote-unquote Muslim guy, by the way, I have to say it again, grooming, raping a girl is as far away from Islamic teachings as you can get. But again, it's dragged into this anti-Muslim narrative, and there are people out there trying to claim that Islam teaches us this as far away as you could. Okay, so why don't you speak out about it? I have been speaking out about it for years. No, speak within the Muslim. I have been speaking within the Muslim community for years. Just last month, I was at the UK Islamic Mission National Conference, and I brought up the topic of grooming and how we should be doing. We have an Islamic obligation and an Islamic duty to reprimand people who are involved in it. Anyway, so the point is,
how would they be punished under Sharia law? Say we were in a very, very strict country. If somebody was caught,
I'll tell you the answer. And I know a lot of people who are anti-Islam. They'll be cheering this one on. They'll be cheering this one on.
I can see what's coming, and I know my mother will be cheering this one on. Go on.
It's harsh. It's harsh. So they'll be punished if they're single, if they're not married, by lashing, and if they're married, they'll be punished with death.
Is there a particular way?
However, it's really important to mention that when you're in a country like which we're in now, which isn't a Sharia country, then Sharia law actually tells you that you can't implement those punishments. And again, this is another big, okay, for a lot of people. So I've had interactions before with members of the Football Lads Alliance and the EDL. This is back in the day. And we've had open questions and we've discussed Sharia. And they've been like, no, but you want Sharia law in our country. You want to chop thieves' hands off for stealing, and you want to do this and this and this. And then when I explained to them that actually Sharia law, and I've studied Sharia law, Sharia law teaches that it's actually forbidden, it's prohibited to implement any of these corporal punishments in a place where it's not accepted by the majority.
So if there are Muslims in a country that doesn't have Sharia law, Muslims must submit to the law of that country.
They have to submit to the law of the land.
And the customs of the land as well.
And the custom. So there's a principle in Sharia, and this is another thing. People see Islamic law as something which is very rigid, and it hasn't changed, and it can't change for 1,500 years. Oh, no. That's not the case at all. Sharia law has developed over the centuries a lot. But one of the principles of Sharia law is that customs override or customs rule. So any law which is to be implemented, now we're talking about a place where Islamic law is implemented. So we're not talking about the UK. We're talking about in a place where Islamic law is implemented.
Yes.
For example, Indonesia. The people of Indonesia have very different cultural traditions to people in Saudi Arabia, for example, who have very different cultural traditions to people in Turkey, for example. And so what the Sharia teaches is that the culture overrules and the culture decides which way the law is interpreted. It's such a fundamental element.
There's so much.
So if that's the case for a Muslim country, then how do you think about a Muslim minority living in a country like this?
I'm going to ask you two very sensitive questions, and we will proceed with all due caution. The grooming gangs, they were men. They were in the UK. They were largely Muslim, but they were also of a particular demographic. They were mainly Pakistani. Is it neither of us are Pakistani? Do you think there's a route of interrogation that needs to be explored there as far as Pakistani culture goes, as far as Pakistani interpretations of Islam go? Is it a Hindustan problem from before the breakup?
You see, so again, I'm just trying to be as honest and as real as I can be. So I don't have all the statistics on that. However, I remember seeing reports which are claiming that the majority of them weren't Pakistani. So I've seen that, but I can't remember. I can't quote it for you. However, that's still not to deny the fact that, and this is something which I bring up with my Pakistani friends often. You guys are being done over by these people who are bringing a bad name to your community. How do we stop it? And I think again, if we look at what's happened, and I'm not about laying all the blame on the local authorities, although a lot of the blame has to be put on the local authorities because they were turning a blind eye. And the reason they quoted is because they didn't want to stir racial relations or something along those lines.
It was that. Are you suggesting that their cowardice and incompetence made things 10 times worse than they ever needed to
I'm
be?
suggesting they were the people who were right. So they were responsible from their aspect. However, that doesn't reduce the responsibility from each and every single man who was involved in doing what they did.
Agreed.
They're responsible ultimately. And my faith teaches that if you're not held to account for abusing somebody in this life, then in the next life you will certainly be taken into account by God for that.
The next sensitive topic is...
But sorry, just to come back to that one.
Sure.
And so this is the problem. This is the issue. Not only will these disgusting excuses of a Muslim who've brought so much shame onto our name, not only will they be targeting white girls who are coming out of the care system, when they're mixing in people's houses and people's homes and their friends and their relatives, do you really think that
if a creep is a creep.
Exactly. Do you really think the Pakistani girls are safe?
No.
They're not.
And maybe we just don't hear as much.
Of course. For different reasons.
For different reasons.
Cultural. Maybe the girls are much less likely to speak out because of the kind of stigma which might be attached to it. You know, how much of this abuse was done, quote unquote, in-house, within families. People don't talk about these things.
The little bit that I know about, because I used to work for the Crown Prosecution Service, about child abuse is typically it's in-house because it's easier to execute and it's easier to coerce and cover up. To take somebody who is from a different family, who has protection, is hard, which is, as you say, is why they chose girls who were coming out of the care system. They didn't have brothers, uncles, fathers, any men to
be
stand
there
up
for
for
them.
Yeah.
And this is what I'm saying, Richard. So when people on these alleged far-right Islamophobic rallies are talking about the problem with grooming gangs in the UK, what I'm trying to say is, yes, we do have a problem with all groomers, regardless of why are you so arrogant now that you can't come together with me to solve the issue? Let's come together and solve it together. Whether that's the cost of living, whether that's the NHS, let's come together and solve these issues. We don't have to be divided and you're to blame for everything. It's all your fault. It's all your fault. It's not my fault. It's not the Muslim community's fault. And to prove that, what I'm saying is, come on, let's come together. Reach out. You get your track record of voluntary work where you serve people first. Once I see that track record, or any other person sees that track record, then you can approach like-minded people and you can work together to, solve it. Unfortunately, most people who I see, they're just out there. 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 Th shouting and being angry and pointing their finger at everybody else. And, you know, we have a tradition which says when you point a finger of criticism at somebody, don't forget there are three fingers pointing back at you. What have you done to solve this?
You're not very critical of the police or of local government. Don't we need them to get past this namby-pamby, simpering, cowardly attitude around racism? They seem to be too scared of being called racist, don't they?
So this, my understanding here, I won't say my opinion, my understanding is not going to be one which is popular within the likes of Tommy's followers, because they're pushing, the thing at the moment is this two-tier policing, two-tier policing. And the claim is that white people are treated differently to people of colour by the police in a way which is unfair towards them. I've looked into this. I've looked into it. And again, this is not going to be popular, but I have to say it because it's what I believe, and I'm trying to be an honest and genuine person. The stats which I've seen do confirm there's two-tier policing. They do confirm that there is two-tier policing.
You be careful.
But it's the other way.
Oh,
it's the other way. People who are black, people who are from ethnic minority backgrounds, are much more likely to be stopped and searched, to be incarcerated, to be, and the list goes on and on and on and on. So I get it. It's not going to be popular. Well, I'm just looking based on the statistics what I've been seeing.
People are going to hear that and they're going to cite the Manchester airport incident.
Yeah.
I don't think any arrests have been made.
Okay, that's one incident, isn't it? We're talking about stats here. Let's
the general stats.
Yeah.
Okay. As far as that Manchester airport incident goes, what do you think should have been done?
I'm not the biggest fan of politics, right? So we all saw the first clip first, where the policeman stamped on the guy's head.
Yes,
that was wrong. Nobody can justify that for any reason. That was wrong.
I've taught control and restraint to the police. You just don't do that.
Exactly.
Because not only because it's wrong to the person, you could end up banged up. You kill someone.
Well, then somebody's going to say, no, but you didn't see the video which came after where the guy went around crazily punching a policewoman in the face and all the rest of it. Yep. And the guy was wild, and what he did was wrong. Like I said, no matter what wrong the guy did in Manchester Airport, that doesn't justify the stamping on the head.
Okay.
So I think there is a need for action against the policeman. I don't think we should be giving him in particular a medal, like what some people have been coming out and saying. And at the same time, the reaction of these guys in the match, it was diabolical. It was disgusting, rampaging around just. But also as well,
they broke the woman's nose, didn't they?
Yeah. It was horrible, and they should be taken into account for that as well.
I don't think they've been.
But look at this. Look how things are framed, and then look how people can go off their emotions. So remember when we only saw the first video?
Yes.
I'll be honest. I was disgusted, and I thought, in retrospect, I thought that this is what that policeman did has wrong. I've seen the whole picture. Wrong, disgusting, and then we saw some protests outside the police station, and I think to some extent those protests were justified if that only clip, the first one, what we saw was all that we saw.
Yeah.
But it later transpired that it wasn't. There were more details to the case, and I think a lot of people have been embarrassed since how they jumped their emotions got the better of them. They jumped to conclusions. They thought it was something to do with race, and before you know it, we get the full picture, like we saw with the Southport stabber.
And actually,
again, it's emotions.
It's emotions first.
So if we're talking about two-tier policing, let's put emotions to one side. Let's look at the stats, and let's see what's really going on. And if there is two-tier policing, let's agree that we'll challenge it together, however the evidence points. So not just a case of, if it's my people, white, British, working class people who are being hard done by, then I'll stand and I'll fight for that cause. But if it's blacks, we'll leave it. Likewise, the other side applies. If it's my people, ethnic minorities, who are being hard done by the police and by policing, then I'll stand up for it and I'll defend it. But if white people are the victims in this, then no, let's come together and let's challenge any injustice wherever it happens against whoever.
10 minutes back, it looked like I was trying to pin something on Pakistani Muslims. I wasn't. I like generally Pakistanis. My father was born in Pakistan, in Rawalpindi. I think one of the things that is coming up thematically is the way in which we sort data as human beings. So it's easy to make generalizations. It's easier. It burns less calories to just make generalizations. You're Muslim, you're white, but of a certain, I don't know, right. Who is usually called the right-wing thugs? It's like white working class people. Thank you. I do speak English, but only vaguely. It seems to me to be a sorting issue of categories in humans, all humans. We think with prejudice, which is natural, prejudgment. You couldn't drive a car if you didn't have prejudgment. You've seen the scenario before as you approach the light, so you have prejudgment. It's just faster. It's easy to glom people into groups. It's easier than seeing people as individuals because that's just a task. You said you see people as souls. That's an even bigger task. It's easy to just say, well, all these people are like that and all these people are like this. Do you agree that there is maybe the opponent that we need to wrestle with here is filtering, the way in which we filter reality?
I think with recent events and the way the world seems to be going, with the rise of social media, the rise of misinformation, disinformation, you know, I've got relatives who send me stories through about the dollar's just crashed and it's just a fake news website, but because it looks like a genuine website,
I get one of them at least every 2 days.
People fall for it. They don't know how to differentiate between sources of information, which is really important. You know, even in the Islamic tradition, this is talking with preserving scriptures, so preserving the Quran and preserving the Hadith and preserving the teachings. We're told if it wasn't for the chains of narration, then anybody could say whatever they wanted.
Yeah.
We're in that time now,
right?
Where anybody can say whatever they want. And what I found interesting during the riots, most of these accounts which were stoking the flames, they weren't people's real names. They were just a random name, Dr. Dolittle with a picture of William Shakespeare or something. So these people don't even have the balls to show who they... Should I have said that?
No, it's fine. Okay. I'm smiling because somebody sent me, here's a group of Muslims burning the British flag. And I watched the video and I was like, they were saying, they were trying to say Allahu Akbar in a really weird way. And I was like, I don't think they're Muslims. They're all masked. That's bait. You're falling for bait here. Not that groups of extremists haven't burnt flags and shout, absolutely. But this thing that you've just sent me, I'm like, mate, that's not real. So
just a reminder.
Yeah.
I want to come back to Allahu Akbar. We'll come back to that after.
Okay.
Because that's a new national debate, which seems like it's going to start happening.
Yeah.
We'll come back to that after.
Okay. So yes, in the second section, I want to get into some more of the scripture. The second sensitive topic around grooming gangs that will be cited is the Prophet Muhammad's marriage to a young girl that was consummated when she was still young. How would you reply to that?
So what does the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, getting married to a young woman have to do with grooming gangs in England in 2024? People
would cite that as a legitimization, a scriptural legitimization of pedophilia.
And is that what the groomers are citing?
No, I wouldn't imagine.
They are getting, in what is in their minds, easy girls.
Yeah.
Whereas their religion tells them you cannot have a relationship, and this is the religion taught to us by the Prophet Muhammad. You cannot have any intimate relationship without it being under that banner of marriage.
You have to marry.
You have to marry.
Anything outside of it is forbidden.
Back to the question of the age of Aisha when she was married to the Prophet Muhammad. So the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, had several wives. All of his wives were all divorcees and they were all relatively old, except for one. That's the first thing. So when people try to make him out as this sex crazy kind of warlord who's hunting for the young virgins in the village or all the rest of it, all a load of rubbish. One of his wives was younger than him. He married her when she was unmarried before that. That was Aisha. Now the age of Aisha. You see, I like to take a step back and question, why are you questioning the age of Aisha? And if you discover that it's something which is unacceptable by you, does that mean that Islam is wrong and you won't accept the religion? And if you're willing to apply that principle to other biblical prophets, then you're going to be in trouble, my friend. Whether it's Abraham, marrying the slave girl who was given to him, does the fact that biblical scholars of the Bible, who estimate that Mary's age when she became pregnant with Jesus was between 12 and 14. So because of that, and because of that not fitting into our modern understandings of what paedophilia is, or child abuse, or statutory rape, if you like, because Mary was between 12 to 14 years old, does that now mean that we can't take any religious or spiritual teachings from God because he did that to Mary? So that to one side. What you've got to understand is this was a completely different time, completely different. We're talking about 1,500 years ago. 200 years ago in this country, it wouldn't even have been an issue. 200 years ago, this issue, it wouldn't have been an issue.
You mean the consummation of a marriage with a 12-year-old?
I'm going to get to the age. I'm going to get to the age in a bit, because even that, the claim that she was a child is not what was the cultural norm in that time. So I'll come on to a few of the details about that. So all I'm trying to say is, according to our modern standards, are we going to say that we will not accept any moral teachings from anybody who breaks the modern understanding of ages of consent? And if we are going to apply that rule, then apply it fairly, apply it to everybody, and you're not going to be able to be a proper Jew or Christian or a Muslim or even a follower of many other religions for that matter in the first place. Okay, now the age of Aisha itself, so we have in the hadith literature, we have mentioned that the age of Aisha when the Prophet Muhammad consummated the marriage with her was 9 years old. 9 years old. Very young.
Oh, consummated the marriage.
Yeah, consummated the marriage. 9 years old. So when he had intimate relations with her,
it wasn't 12, it was 9.
She was 9 years old.
Okay.
However, there are other records when you look at what's known in the Islamic sciences as seerah, which is like a historic biographical record. You have scholars who've done research and looked at different events and put them on the timeline. And actually what they say is actually her age was closer to 18. Right. Possibly 20 years old. Okay. So there's difference, even amongst Muslim scholars, there are different opinions on the age of Aisha when he married her. There's no difference, however, there's no difference on her being a woman and not being a girl. How was womanhood kind of defined in that time? It was when a girl reached the age of puberty, she was considered to be a woman. Again, I'm not talking about today. I'm talking about 1,500 years ago. So she was considered to be a woman by everybody. It was something which was completely normal in that society. And I think it's hypocritical if we're going to apply our standards and our understandings today to a time back then. So then you might say, okay, but do people not look at the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, as a role model? And does that not then sanctify or justify marrying anybody who's reached the age of puberty? And what I would say is that as far as I understand, the majority of Muslim countries have 18 as the age of consent. And that's for several reasons. So the state itself, the country themselves, they have the ability, if there are other factors involved, say for example, girls now are starting to hit puberty at a younger age. However, their maturity is not the same. It's not the same as it was back then. You know, people, they could be a 7-year-old, 8-year-old child, boy or girl, and they knew how to deal with the world. They would have employment, they'd be working, maybe similar to Victorian times here. And the point is, the state has the ability to implement the law and the age of consent based on what is suitable for society at that time.
I want to ask another difficult question, and then we'll come to the Allahu Akbar issue. Isn't it true, devil's advocate time, that the intention for all Muslims should be to bring everyone into a global collective, the Ummah, and then create a global caliphate? Therefore, if that's true, shouldn't we see you as threatening colonizers?
Threatening colonizer. That's a new one.
I like that term.
Threatening colonizer.
My father was born in Pakistan because we were the colonizers.
Yeah, you learn something new every day.
I don't look very. I know it's.
You don't. So, threatening colonizers.
Yeah.
Should Muslims bring everybody to Islam? So, there's a chapter in the Quran. And I'll just share an interaction what I had with somebody. This was, again, at one of these events where we invited people from the far right, and some of them were genuine kind of far right ideologue groups. There was one guy who came to me before the event started, and he wanted to debate with me. He wanted to prove that I was wrong and he was right, and that's not my way. That's not my way. I don't like debating with somebody if the only goal is to prove the other person wrong. I'd rather have a discussion where you can both go towards the correct conclusion together. And I think that's empowering. And I think that builds bridges and breaks down barriers. But put that to one side. So this gentleman, he comes up to me, and he actually had a copy of the Tommy Robinson Quran, which confused me. It confused me, and I'll tell you why. Because he came up to me and he said, doesn't your Quran say that you've got to kill disbelievers wherever you find them? And I'm like, so why aren't I killing you now?
Aren't I failing as a Muslim right now? You are not dead.
I believe in this book. I believe in this book, and I believe what this book teaches me.
Yeah.
So why aren't I killing you right now? And I don't think he was expecting that. It was odd. He said, no, but look, and he quoted a verse which many Islamophobes quote all the time, and it was literally about a specific battle at a specific location with specific people. After they'd been set upon, Muslims were given permission now to fight the disbelievers as they were fought against.
Okay. So it was just for that one context.
All you had to do is read the verse before it and the verse after, and it was all very clear.
It was clear that.
However, that's not to say that a lot of these Muslim extremists don't also have the same interpretation of that verse.
Sure.
And this is the irony. This is what I find very ironic, is that the far right, the Islamophobes, ISIS, and the extremists, they literally preach the same version of Islam.
Tell me more about that.
Sometimes I find that the far right Islamophobes preach it more than the Muslim extremists, and they'll challenge me with certain ideas and certain verses of the Quran, and then when I explain to them, no, you're wrong. It's like, hold on, who's the student of Islamic sciences here?
Right.
And it's like they're convinced, or they have to, for their narrative to work, they have to take the most extreme version of interpretation of the Islamic scriptures and push them out as if all Muslims believing that. And this is something also, coming back to Tommy Robinson, which I think he does. And whether that's based on his interactions with extremists and terrorists in Luton or not, unfortunately, he takes the most extreme interpretation of every kind of verse and every kind of stance in the Quran, what anybody's ever done, and he gathers it all together and presents it as if it's Islam. And it couldn't be further from the truth.
A moment of empathy for Tommy Robinson. I wasn't in debate with him when I got him on. I allowed him uninterrupted exposition, as I'm trying to do with you. His version of Islam was not the version of Islam. I think I've had a very different experience to him. We're both white guys from the UK, roughly the same age. What do you think was happening in Luton in the specific context where he was, what do you think he was exposed to that led him to the conclusions that he's come to?
I can't speak on his behalf, but I've just seen a few little insights, where he winds the window down and the guy punches him.
The sword of Islam punches him.
Sword of Islam, yeah. And these people, they were dangerous people. They are dangerous people. And the poison which they spread throughout the Muslim community here in the UK, it was damaging. But I see an intelligent side to Tommy as well. And I'm like thinking, surely he must know that all the mosques across the country and these people were the first to be kicked out of mosques. So when he refers to the likes of Abu Hamza al-Masri, the guy with the hook hand and the patch, you could have created
he looks like
bigger
a bad
villain
guy.
if you tried. Like, come on. I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist, but
that guy's a plant.
Come on.
Yeah.
Come on. Come on. So you've got the guy with the eye patch and the hook. You couldn't make this stuff up, could you?
How did he get that damage? Was it?
But the point was, he was kicked out of his mosque. His mosque wouldn't entertain him. Anjem Chowdhury, again. He was kicked out of the mosques. You know where his platform was? It wasn't in the mosques. It was on BBC News, Channel 4 News, ITV News, in all the mainstream media who were pushing him and his messages so hard that I'm not surprised that the average white British person thought that this is mainstream Islam in our country. But I don't think that Tommy Robinson would have fallen into the same trap. I can't imagine, because he's had experience with people, and yeah.
You think in the way that he's been misrepresented, because he knows he's been misrepresented. He's even said, if you know about me and you hate me, I don't blame you, because you know about me through the mainstream media, so I can't blame you.
Well, do you know what? I would say exactly the same as what Tommy Robinson said, but from a Muslim leader perspective. If you hate me because of what you've heard about me in the mainstream media and social media, I can understand. Because the image, what's been given out, the narratives which have been forcefully pushed, it's exactly what Tommy Robinson said, I would say, as a member of the Muslim community.
So there is an equivalency there, kind of. Weirdly enough, between the way in which Muslims are represented and then the way in which Tommy and people aligned with Tommy are
I'd go even further, and I'd say that I think if there are members of this movement who see social injustice and they genuinely, constructively want to bring a solution to it, I think there's room for alliances to be built. And to be honest, Richard, after we had the riots here in Liverpool, what I did is I started meeting up with people who were seen to be kind of like the influencers who brought people to the Save Our Children rally. And one thing we discussed and I discovered is that, you know what, we have a lot more in common with each other than we do with, number one, the people who are kind of facilitating and coordinating these rallies in the first place, and number two, the elements of the government or the whole globalist movement who are opposed to us as well. I think we have a lot more in common with each other than we do with a lot of these people from outside who seem to be the ones who are causing the trouble and then blaming us.
Sitting in rooms with both groups of people, I'm 100% certain that you do. I think it's a fostered division, personally. Not that I'm here to give you my conspiracy theories, but maybe there is a rightful fear of a union between Christians and
so
Muslims.
How about this? I don't even think it's between Christians and Muslims. Let's take the titles away for a minute. Let's look at your average working class Pakistani family and your average working class white British family. Their struggles will be very similar. Their needs will be very similar. And I think there are people up there who are taking the mick and trying their best to make sure that they're at each other's throats. to keep them in their place, as it were.
I have no doubt. I think it's definitely orchestrated. Back to the difficult question, and then there's some other topics I want to touch on with you in the time we have. Is it not the responsibility of Muslims to bring people to Ummah and then create a global caliphate?
Bring people to Ummah and create a global caliphate. The Ummah, first of all, there's misunderstanding as to what the Ummah refers to. So the Ummah means people or nation, and every prophet has his Ummah. So after the emergence of the Prophet Muhammad, all of us, every person who's been born after the time of the Prophet Muhammad is considered to be from the Ummah of the Prophet Muhammad. And then they're split into two groups. Ummatul, the people who accepted the invitation and the people who rejected the invitation. But we're all still from the same Ummah. In terms of having
all humanity, you mean?
Yeah. But after it comes in phases of prophets.
Okay.
So the people before the Prophet Muhammad would have been the Ummah, if you like, of Jesus, the nation of Jesus. However, it said that was a limited geography for the people who were the followers of Jesus, whereas the Prophet Muhammad is global. So, in terms of establishing a khilafah, so we've seen this movement, and this is after 19. Let me get my date right. Is it 1917, 1923, the fall of the Ottoman Empire? So there's a group of people, I think they've recently been proscribed, called Hizb ut-Tahrir. And all they're about is you cannot build Islamic institutions until you establish the Khilafah, the Caliphate. You cannot vote in any disbelievers' democracy elections until you establish. You cannot pass wind until you establish the Khilafah. No, seriously, these guys were just on this. It was as if it was a pillar of Islam, which the Prophet Muhammad forgot to teach us about. Okay. Yeah. Seriously, they're so fixated on re-establishing the Khilafah, and look where that led to. That led to ISIS. That led to Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi declaring that he was the Caliph of the new Muslim world. Whereas I was watching it and I'm thinking, what is this guy on about? You know, anyone who studied the basics of Islam can see a person like that declaring himself to be the new world Muslim leader and laugh. Yeah. And then after that, cry that some people are actually listening to this guy and believing him. Yeah. The first question when I saw him ascend the pulpit in the Nouri Mosque in Mosul, which I visited, by the way, that mosque, after it was blown up by who? By ISIS. That wasn't even an American Apache. And the American Apaches did a lot of damage in Iraq. But that mosque itself was blown up by ISIS.
Why did they blow it up?
Because they're champions of Muslims. So they have to blow up mosques and kill Muslims, don't they? What else would they do to establish the caliphate? Honestly, I've been to Mosul. You know, this was a humanitarian mission we were on. Just after ISIS had been expelled from the eastern side of the river in Mosul, they were still on the western side, and we still had to be careful where we went to avoid the sniper range and all the rest of it. And I spoke to people firsthand on the ground, and I learned a lot about ISIS, and it's a topic which it really makes my blood boil.
You've seen firsthand the damage they did.
Yeah. I'll be honest with you, when I first went, my expectation of ISIS, what I thought is, I expect them to be bad, but I think the media have probably exaggerated how bad they were.
Yes.
When I got there to Mosul, I realized that the media have grossly under-exaggerated who these people were and what they were about.
I'll ask you an adjacent question. As an imam, can you tell me, if somebody is Muslim, are there things they can do that are so terrible that renders them effectively non-Muslim?
There are things what a Muslim can do which renders them non-Muslim, but we're told to be very, 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 very careful in applying those to them.
Okay.
And the reason for that is a lot of these terrorist extremist groups take this concept of takfir, of kind of making somebody a kafir or a disbeliever, taking them out of the fold of Islam. They use it as a weapon.
Okay.
Whereas we're told Islamically, this is something for a judge
Okay.
I'm talking about an official judge
Yeah.
to be responsible for.
Yeah.
And there are so many steps in the procedure before you come to that conclusion. For example, not many Muslims will know this. If a Muslim leaves Islam and they say, I am now, what's the term for it? An ex-Muslim.
Yeah.
In Arabic, the term for that person is murtad.
Mm.
If a person comes to me today, says, my name's Abdullah, I was brought up Muslim, I read the Quran, it didn't make any sense for me, I found Jesus, I became Christian, I'm a murtad. As a Muslim, I'm not allowed to call him a murtad.
He can declare it, but you
He can
can't.
declare it himself, but I can't because he hasn't been through that official process.
Does it? What is that? An apostate?
Apostate, yeah.
Yeah.
That's the
term.
the meaning of it.
Yeah.
And so Islam is so careful to make sure you don't just throw these titles out willy-nilly. Now, what that does, it gives us a problem, Richard, and I'll tell you why. Because when somebody jumps on a bus in London and blows themselves up and kills lots of other people with them, people will come running to me and say, so do you consider that person to be a Muslim? And I have to abide by the
Islamic
rules.
law.
And the rules are that person was a Muslim and I have no right to say they weren't a Muslim. I can say that their actions were completely un-Islamic and they'll be taken to account for them. Their actions were un-Islamic, but I can't question ultimately the belief of that person unless they go through this process.
For the sake
So
of...
so it's difficult. And what that can seem like is that I, as a mainstream Muslim, I'm defending or protecting somebody who's a horrible, nasty person.
A strong rhetorical duck and weave would be to say Islam forbids their actions.
Of course.
And you can avoid the question of whether they're Muslim or not,
Of
because
course.
I know that's, well, within Islamic tradition.
Would you see the wisdom in why you don't just throw the term willy-nilly?
Of course, because, well, people have died over the issue of who and who is not.
There's another principle in Islam as well, in that, say, for example, if somebody dies doing un-Islamic actions, then the normal procedure for a funeral is that you're encouraged to attend the funeral of anybody when they pass away, except if their actions were un-Islamic, and then there's a principle that you can avoid attending their funeral, but you still don't say that they weren't Muslim.
What are the things that if you did repeatedly would effectively render you non-Muslim? What are some of the things that people could do?
So there are certain things which people could say. Say, for example, if a Muslim says, and I'm saying it as a quote now, I'm not saying it. So
don't take it out of context.
I'm not becoming a disbeliever. So if you were to say Jesus is God Almighty,
okay,
that would be something which you could say, which would render you a Muslim. In terms of actions which are abuses against other people, they don't really fall into that criteria. It's more to do with your beliefs and your words which confirm your beliefs.
Yes.
If that makes sense.
Okay.
Not necessarily about the crimes that you commit.
It is forbidden in Islam to kill.
Yes.
Except
in just cause. So if there is an occasion where somebody's given the death penalty, for example, then the point is you cannot be a wanton murderer go around killing people. It has to be done by the state. Who's running it?
You said wonton like it was a Chinese dish. You can't be a wanton. You can't wanton criminality.
The general rule is no, you can't kill anyone. There are some exceptions. If you're in a war situation and somebody is attacking you, is attacking your family, attacks your property in self-defense, you might kill them. You might try to avoid it. You might kill them, and then you're not taken into account.
There's no scenario then where somebody being a non-believer, how do you say it properly in Arabic?
Kafir.
Kafir.
Yeah.
Where if they're kafir, they can be killed. Is there anything?
So back to what I was saying, this interaction which I had with the far right guy. He brings out his Tommy Robinson Quran. He said, "Look at this verse here," and I said, "Okay, did you know?" Because he asked me something similar. He said to me, "So what about kafirs then for being kafirs? What about us?" I said, "Well, actually, there's a chapter in the Quran. It's a small one, very small. It's at the back. It's called Surah Al-Kafirun, the chapter of the Kafirs. What does it say? Let's read it together." And I opened the Tommy Robinson version of the Quran. I shouldn't even call it the Quran, but. And I went to the part of the Quran where this chapter should be, and it's not there because Tommy's decided he's got another order for the other than what Muslims have been reading for many years. So anyway, we finally find it. What does it say? I've memorized it in Arabic. I've memorized it in English. It says, "Say," and this was a command to the Prophet Muhammad. Say, Muhammad, O you who disbelieve, Ya ayyuhal kafirun, I do not worship what you worship. And you do not worship what I worship. And I will never worship what you worship. And you do not worship what I worship. The key is in the last sentence. To you be your way, and to me be mine.
And that's it.
That's the chapter of the disbelievers in the Quran. To you be your way, and to me be mine. And then what we've got, and it's not been perfect, but we have, if we're to look at Islamic history, we have a pretty solid track record of non-Muslims living as minorities across the Muslim lands for as long as anybody who can remember. Even to this day, look at the likes of Egypt. Thriving Christian community. They've been there for as long as Islam has ruled Egypt. Lebanon, another example. Iraq, another example. All over the Middle East, wherever you go. And the reason why is because actually we're not just told to leave them be and let them do what they want. We're told that the Muslim state, the Islamic state, and I know that's got negative connotations, just to use that term, the Islamic state is responsible for the protection of minority communities, even when they have a different religion than you. And not only that, but if they have different customs, then you should facilitate those for them. For example, if they want to drink alcohol.
Is that
in a Muslim country, Islamically, the Islamic State is responsible for protecting that right for them.
I've lived in 2 Muslim countries, lived in Malaysia, lived in the United Arab Emirates.
Both of which protect the right for non-Muslims to drink alcohol.
They do. And
but I don't think they just restrict it to non-Muslims, right?
No. Well, Malaysia, well, yeah. I mean, but yes, kind of. But like, okay. There's a few different directions I want to go in with you. Just to wrap that thing of the way in which Islam is usually attacked. Forced conversion. Haram or halal?
Forced conversion is haram. It's forbidden. You cannot. There's a verse in the Quran. It says there is no compulsion in religion.
Yes.
That's from a spiritual perspective. From a political perspective, why would you force hypocrites to be part of your ranks? Why would you force somebody to accept a religion which they don't really believe in?
Yes.
In the inside, that's defined. That's the definition of a hypocrite in Islam.
Yes.
And these are they're not people you want to be in your ranks.
I cited Malaysia and the UAE because it's difficult for me because when I'm talking to Tommy and the guys around him, their view of Islam and their view of Muslims is very, very different. I think I got a very soft version. And maybe it's because I was going to Islamic countries where people didn't feel under threat as they do here. I'm not making excuses for anybody. I'm just like, I just had a very, very different. So my experience, as we said in here, when we did the thing, is like the major threat is to my cholesterol because everyone wants to feed me all the time. And it's not like chicken and a bit of broccoli. They want to give you cake. They want to give you, delicious food and stuff. But generally the sense of like welcomingness, warmth.
Maybe that's a plan for them to kill the kuffar.
Yes, with obesity.
Feed him sugar, feed him.
Keep feeding them sugar.
Kill him. kill them all.
Kill them all with sugar and baklava. But I'm aware that there is. So with the Bangladeshi mate that I grew up with, his parents sort of took me in, and it was a time when I was dating a Bosnian girl, and his mum was so happy. She was crying because she was like, "Oh, he'll join, he'll become, and he'll be one of us." And she couldn't have been happier. All she wanted to do was see me get married and have kids, and then she could relax. Then she'd be okay. There's loads of stories I have like that, but obviously, in Luton or in certain contexts, there's another face, there's another flavor to Islam. We've discussed Wahhabism, and I've sort of blamed that bitter flavor because it exists. Like I've never denied that it exists. There's a bitter flavor. I told you I had one experience in the Islamic school in the UK. Remember, I told you I was teaching in schools, and there was a guy he said there's no music in Islam. Any clapping summons shaitan. That's another story for another time. That was the one time I had it really in my life.
Yeah.
And he called a white guy in to do that in front of the students. He was eventually arrested. He was just a weird guy. The bitter face of Islam, what I've been calling Wahhabi Islam. Could you address that?
Okay, so what's referred to as Wahhabi Islam? First things first, people who are put into that group don't like the term. They don't like to be called Wahhabis. But the reason other Muslims call them Wahhabis is because they are ultimately students of a school which was founded by the Saudi scholar called Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab. And he came around during the time when the Ottomans were still, they had their empire. It was fully running. It was in a strong position. Maybe other global powers wanted to kind of sabotage that strength, what they had. And his claim was to purify Islamic beliefs and bring them back in line to how they were at the time of the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. What that involved actually was attacking, criticizing, questioning a lot of traditional practices, what Muslims have been doing, which can be traced back to the time of the Prophet Muhammad, which major scholars in Islam have never had any issue with. And now all of a sudden they were becoming issues. So for example, if you were to have a verse of the Quran in a pouch and tie it around your neck, for example, that's something which other Muslims have used as blessings. You can find the origins of the practice from the companions of the Prophet Muhammad. But Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab firmly said, no, this is polytheism. You're worshipping gods besides God, and that has to go.
Shirk.
So it's a movement which is it's kind of gone alongside. It's gone alongside the political Islamic movement. So in Saudi Arabia, there are two families. There's Al Saud, who all the kings and all the political leadership are under. And there's also Al Sheikh, the family of the Al means the family. So Al Saud is the Saud family. Al Sheikh, the Sheikh family.
I thought Al meant the, but you're not saying Al.
It does, but this is Al, so it's a long Al. Yeah. So that's the difference. So Al Sheikh, the family of the Sheikh. Who is the Sheikh who's been referred to here? Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab.
Okay.
So from the foundation of Saudi Arabia, up until our days, the politics has been left to Al Saud, and the religion, the religious teachings, has been under the auspices of
Wahhab.
Al Sheikh and his descendants. Like literally, it's inherited.
Okay.
What's happened now in Saudi Arabia is Turki Al Sheikh. He's the prince who loves Tyson Fury, loves the boxing, loves the raves in the desert, loves the WWE wrestling. He proudly announced, we're going to bring women wrestlers to Saudi Arabia.
Wow.
But his position is traditionally, he's the most senior in the Al Sheikh family. So he should be the one upholding this strong, conservative, strict Wahhabi Islam. It's gone out of the window now. That's going to have a knock-on effect globally in that the Wahhabi / Salafi movement, which you've been seeing, which a lot of people tend to describe as a bit of a Puritan movement.
Yeah, it's puritanical, yeah.
But from the Wahhabis, you've got two main offshoots. You've got one offshoot which is incredibly loyal to the government and wouldn't even think about even dreaming about criticizing power. And you've got the other lot who've gone in the other direction, and they're all about, let's just blow everything up everywhere. ISIS, they can be tracked back to this Wahhabi Salafi ideology. Al-Qaeda, again, tracked back, whether it's Osama bin Laden, whether it's Ayman al-Zawahiri, whether it's Abu Hamza Hook Hand down in London, whether it's Anjem Chowdhury, whether it's all of these modern terrorist movements. They're not coming out of what I would refer to as traditional Islam, which is based on the Sunni Islam, which is based on the 4 traditional Orthodox schools. They're coming from this Salafi, no madhabism. I don't want to get too technical because it might fly over a lot of people's heads.
Yeah.
but it's kind of come about from this movement. Some people even argue that the movement itself, or the teachings of Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, were there on purpose so they could do takfir, i.e. declare non-Muslim, the Muslims of the Arabian Peninsula who were there, because they were doing Ottoman practices. So then they could fight the Ottomans as non-Muslims and disbelievers. They could take their houses, take their wealth, and get rid of the Ottoman influence in Arabia.
So it was supported politically to help. That was the Brits, right, who were supporting that, because they wanted fighters against the Ottomans.
There's a really interesting book which a lot of people say is fabricated, and even when I was reading it, there were some statements which did raise question marks. But this is a very strong narrative within the Muslim world, especially in Turkey. And it's called Confessions of a British Spy. And it's a story, whether it really happened like that or not, it probably didn't, but it's a story of this British general who went over to Saudi, had these private meetings with Sheikh Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, and taught him how to mold the religion in a way which he could manipulate society and get rid of the Ottomans by declaring them non-Muslim. Once again, this goes back to the earlier theme we were talking about. Declaring somebody to be a non-Muslim who's a Muslim is a very serious thing.
Yes.
And so we even have a teaching, this is a teaching from the Prophet Muhammad, that when one of you calls his brother a disbeliever, then verily one of you is.
Wow.
So in other words, it's saying if you wrongly accuse somebody of being a non-Muslim and they're a Muslim, then what that does in return, it takes you out of the fold of Islam.
Is that the same chapter that says a nation divided against itself cannot stand, or is that a different? Is that a different part? No, it's a different part. So I want to make sure in the time that we've got, is there anything else regarding the Tommy Robinson issue that you want to mention to round that out? Would you sit with Tommy when he comes out and have a chat with him if it was non-combative?
So I was invited to travel before Tommy went to prison, to travel to the country where he was and have a debate with him in good faith. And I refused that. And the reason was because it was a debate, and I just felt that me being with him, it would have been me versus him, him and his message versus me and my message. And as I said before, that's not the way I like to do things. I do think that Tommy has this special quality of appearing to be this very, very genuine and concerned person. And that's a virtue. When you're a person who's concerned for his people, that is a virtue. So
do you believe he sincerely is concerned for his people?
No doubt. No doubt. Do I agree with all the methods and the tactics which he uses to express that concern? No. I think he's done a lot of damage.
Do you think in the way that he's staunch and forthright and courageous, he could be a good Muslim?
Allah guides who he wills.
That was a real tricky question. Nice answer.
No, seriously. But it's the
look. He reminds me of people. He reminds me of people.
I know people who were very, very loudly Islamophobic. And I've seen patterns emerge. Because what that means is they've done their research, they've started reading. And I honestly believe for most people, not everybody, but for most people, if they engage with Islam, if they engage with the Quran, if they engage with the Hadiths, if they read about the life of the Prophet Muhammad and what he really stood for, not all these kind of rumors which are going on, what he really stood for, I believe anybody who has an open mind and an open heart will at least be a friend of Muslims and an ally of Muslims. A good friend of mine in the Netherlands, he's called Arnold van Doorn. He's been a friend of many years. He was part of Geert Wilders' PVV party. And he was the guy who was responsible for distributing internationally the film which they made called Fitna, which was just a blatant Islamophobic attack on Islam. And what happened, because he was this big, loud Islamophobe in this Islamophobic party, what happened is that he decided to storm into a mosque one day and really have a go at these guys. And he said, when I went into the mosque, they told me, calm down, come, let's have a cup of tea. Let's have some biscuits. And that might sound like it's something small, but what that shows you when the Muslim, because you've got a Muslim in your head and you think that Muslim is a danger, you think it's a threat to you and your family, to your country, to your values, to your society. This person is dangerous. These people are dangerous. And for me, this is what I tell my community. I tell the Muslim community, I know there's a lot of Islamophobia right now going out there. I know people are saying, but believe me, the more lies they tell about you, the more they misrepresent you, the easier it is to reach out to somebody when you meet them, because they'll find you so different to the angry terrorist, wife beating, child abusing, all the rest of it, Muslim, which they've had in their head for so long. So anyway, back to Arnold van Doorn. It's been a friend of mine for many years. You know, every time I'm in the Netherlands, I try and spend time with him, and we've worked together on a couple of projects in the past. But what happened? He storms into this mosque, and he said that the encounter turned into like a 4-hour interaction. He was only planning on going in, telling them how backwards they were, and coming out. And it ended up him building this really strong relationship with the Imam in the mosque. And then he started to go on, and he became Muslim in the end.
He converted.
He converted to Islam.
Reverted.
Yeah, I prefer converted, to be honest, yeah.
So let's talk about the phrase, Allahu Akbar.
That phrase.
It means death and pain to the infidels, surely.
It means God is great.
Can I say that as a non-Muslim, just because I'm speaking in Arabic? Is it a Muslim-only phrase, or would I be allowed to say it?
Well, if you're an Arab Christian or an Arab Jew, the only way you can say God is great is by saying Allahu Akbar.
Because that's your language.
literally, Coptic Christians in their church, they say Allahu Akbar. And all of a sudden, it's been dragged into an issue by politicians, and they're talking about banning saying Allahu Akbar. Now, this might be because these idiots when they hold their flags up, death to the West and all the rest of it, they're shouting Allahu Akbar. But what you also need to realize is when it's prayer time, the call to prayer says Allahu Akbar. When you have a party for the birth of a child, you say Allahu Akbar. When you start your prayers, you say Allahu Akbar. When Jesus, in his native language of Aramaic, was walking the earth in the Middle East and he wanted to praise God, guess what he would say?
Is it the same in Aramaic?
Yeah. Allahu Akbar. And so I think it's just another non-issue. You know, this is the thing, Richard. Islamophobia is a hell of a drug. Because what I see is, I see people. I try to see souls, like I said. But I see these people, and all of a sudden they care about the rights of animals because we need to stop halal slaughter in this country. It's harmful to animals. And like, yeah, you look like you care about animal welfare. And they're bothered about circumcision. And they're bothered about all these issues, which I don't like to think negatively about people, but you really don't look like the kind of person who has this care for the rights of women and this. And it's just like they look for whatever excuse they can find to have a go at Islam. And it looks like Allahu Akbar is going to be the next one, which is discussed. So let's see where it goes. I think
it'd be very, very difficult to ban it when, you know, given the meaning of the
fact
term.
that it's even been considered to be banned is ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
What is your objective personally now? I mean, you are in the public eye. People know about you. You're young and high energy.
Thank you.
An Imam. Yes, young, high energy. You have a seemingly, what I've seen of you, a realistic and modern view. What are your ambitions? What are your objectives?
It's interesting you call it a modern view because I think it has to be. And I think it's also heavily grounded in the tradition as well.
Yeah.
But the tradition is one which teaches to move with the times, if that makes sense.
Tell me more about that.
It's about being where you are and when you are. So even, for example, people who are training to be a Muslim scholar, to be a mufti, i.e. one who issues legal verdicts on contemporary issues, they're always told that not only do you refer to the scriptures and the sources of Islamic teachings, but you also have to bear into consideration the place where you're issuing, the time, the nature of the times where you're in. And so this is nothing new.
Yeah.
There are some people who okay, they want to live like people did 1500. I've come across them in my time. I've literally come across a community. I won't mention in the country where it was. So a businessman decided to build this beautiful mosque for them in their village. And a few of the young men decided they weren't going to pray in it because this is an innovation.
Okay.
And because the mosque of the Prophet Muhammad was built with palm trunks and palm leaves, that likewise they refused to build. They refused to pray in this one because it's built with concrete and blocks and cement. And so those people, you're always going to find them. You're always going to find them everywhere. But the tradition, the rich scholastic tradition, which I take my teachings from. I'm not claiming to be a scholar, but I aspire to be a student of knowledge. And these are very, very enlightened people who brought great things, not just to the Islamic world, to the whole of humanity. Whether it's Imam Ghazali, for example, I don't know if that's a name you've come across, but not only was he a Muslim scholar, he was a philosopher, and he contributed so much to humanity. You'd be surprised at how much psychology, modern psychology work, actually weaves its way back to him back in those days. And so true, the last 200 years have been quite grim for the Muslim world, with colonization, with being fractured, with civil wars and all the rest of it. But all you have to do is go a little bit further back and you realize that, the first word of the Quran, what was revealed to the Prophet Muhammad, was Iqra. It was recite or read. And I know one of the things you wanted to talk about was the difference between spirituality and politics. Well, for Muslims, this push to be educated, this push to learn is so strong that you've always found a link between spirituality and politics. I'll pause there because a lot of people get mixed up when it talks to mixing religion and politics. And we've seen lots of disasters throughout time when the two kind of come together. But from an Islamic perspective, governance and ruling and administration of your society, making sure that justice is implemented, is something which is very highly emphasized. And it's about education. I was just reading last night, I think something along the lines of 20% of MPs were educated either in Oxford or Cambridge. That's a lot.
That's a lot.
That's a lot. But what it shows you is that even in our country, there's this need for people in governance to be people of education.
Yes.
And so Muslim scholars of the past, I'm not talking about today, Muslim scholars of the past, they've seen politics as one other area of knowledge, of science, what they can learn and excel in. Likewise, spirituality, likewise, finance and financial transactions, and the list goes on and on and on. But yeah, interesting stuff.
It's very rude to ask people their politics, but we've been discussing religion for 2 hours, so I feel I can. Where would you place yourself on the political spectrum?
I'm a hard guy to put in a box.
I thought you were going to say I'm a hard right extremist. I'd be like, the boys are going to love you.
The thing is, because the spectrum moves so much, I think you'd have to ask the spectrum where it is in relation to
let the modern political
in relation to me. But I'm all about justice, peace, and bringing people together. So the fact that people are so diverse, and I'm not just talking about racially diverse, I'm talking about even from Manchester to Liverpool, then bring Yorkshire into it, then bring the South into it. And people are so diverse in their nature. And I love diversity because I see it as an opportunity to meet each other and learn about each other. Right. And I think there's something really special what happens when you meet with people who are different to you, and then you come together and you learn about those differences. And be proud of your identity. Be proud of your identity. Be proud of who you are. I don't have any issue with people being proud of who they are, but that cannot be at the expense of other people. But I think the beauty of diversity is coming together and learning about each other. And you don't even have to accept. You don't even have to conform to what, you know, how the other people are.
Yeah.
Just learn that. I love the fact that people do things differently, and then in their own ways they'll get to where they're going. And as somebody who's traveled all over the world, it's something I love to do. I think travel is a great educator. I've always said 3 weeks travel abroad, as long as you're not in a holiday resort in Spain or southern Turkey and just going to the pub and eating a full English breakfast in the morning every day. A genuine journey to a foreign country where you mix with the people, you learn about them. I believe a 3 week holiday can teach you more than 3 years at university.
Agreed. Thank you for coming in. Thank you for, you know, trying to appeal for calm and peace as far as Tommy goes. I appreciate it, and I know his family and his friends will as well. Is there anything that you want to add, or you any closing things you want to leave with?
I think just back to the Tommy Robinson thing. It's for several reasons. It's for several reasons why I'd tell people to leave him alone. One of them is because he is a human being at the end of the day. And he might be a human being who you don't like, but that does not give you the license to abuse him, whether that's physically, verbally, even if he's abused you verbally, or even if he's abused you physically. So you're upset with that, right? That means what he's done is wrong. So are you now going to respond with something similar to with the same thing what you're criticizing him for? Do you see what I'm saying? It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And then from the other perspective of no, Islam teaches that you cannot be vigilantes. You cannot take justice into your own hands, because if everybody did that for everything, there would be absolute chaos everywhere. And then the other side of it is just be a nice person.
Yeah.
Give him that space. Maybe he will go on his own reflective journey, and let's see how he comes out of it. And I know a lot of people, but no, he can't change. No. We see people as souls, and we do not pass judgment on anybody and their state while they're alive. For as long as they're breathing, for as long as they're alive, everybody, the potential good which is in everybody can emerge. And that's what we're told. The Prophet Muhammad, he taught us that it's possible for one of you to do the actions of the people of heaven until a handspan comes between you and death, and then what was decreed overtakes, and then you'll do the deeds of the people of hell, and that will be your final destination. And likewise, it's possible for one of you for all of his life to do the deeds of the people of the hellfire until a handspan comes between him and death, and then the decree takes over, and then he does the deeds of the people of heaven, and he dies upon that, and that's where he goes. And so this is good for us to always keep ourselves in check, because if you think you're a good person, okay, you're not a naughty boy like Tommy Robinson, you're a good boy, okay. What guarantee do you have that you'll be able to maintain that until your very, very last breath?
Yeah.
And that's why we have to be constantly, personally reflecting and checking in with ourselves, making sure our intentions are correct. And likewise, it's also a warning not to judge anybody who might seem to be on the wrong path, because the door's still open for them. They could be that person who, just before they leave this life, contribute some goodness and some light to this life, and that's how they leave, and then their end is light. Whereas you could be the person, just before you pass, you might have a breakdown. You might just, anything could happen. We've seen it happen. Anything could happen, and you could become a really, really nasty person, and that's the seal and the stamp for you in this life. And look at that, and you were judging him. Never look down on anyone.
That's a good message. Thank you. Where can people find you if they want to know more about what you're doing?
In international airport, anywhere in there.
Is there like a website or social media?
Yeah, social media. I use my name, my real name, and my real picture on all my social media.
Okay.
I'm brave. I'm not like these keyboard warriors who I'm sure are going to be embarrassed that I'm saying this now, just as they're typing their comments. But yeah, Adam Kelwick.
Adam Kelwick.
Kelwick.
On Instagram.
On Instagram, Facebook, X.
Perfect. Adam, thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Richard.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time and for your attention. I've been Richard Grannon, and this has been The Strongest Argument. Thank you.